It's a story that rocked both the city of Chicago and the United States of America. 6 years ago, Empire actor Jussie Smollett reported he was the victim of a hate crime. Smollett says he was attacked by two men outside of his downtown Chicago apartment, saying they poured bleach on him, shouted racial slurs, and put a noose around his neck. But Chicago police said he staged that attack himself. Now, for the first time since a dramatic ruling that overturned his conviction, we're diving into the police files, the evidence, and sharing brand new interviews with the key players at the center of this scandal.
I can tell you the exact moment the lie fell apart for me. And that was, I got a tip. I was standing in the middle of our newsroom and my phone rang. My source said, the two guys you've been reporting that police are questioning for a hate crime are black.
Trust me, I've been a cop for 3 decades in this city. And the one thing I know about victims of crimes like that, once they get free, especially if you have a noose around your neck, they're going to catch the first thing smoking, getting away from where they are. And anything that's out there, they're going to leave it because they're looking for the police.
Can't wait for this special report this weekend. Let's welcome in legal analyst and trial attorney Misty Marris. Misty, it's great to have you here. Why don't you just take our viewers back to when this all began? Let's remind them of this case. What was the initial reaction when the news broke that Jussie Smollett was possibly attacked?
Yeah, this is going to be a great special, Alex. So when this case first broke, everybody was shocked at what looked like a very horrific, racially motivated attack. And people really rallied behind Smollett at the time. And the reporting was largely about finding these individuals who engaged in this conduct. It wasn't until a little bit later that the investigation revealed some things just weren't adding up.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing those sound bites back to back, the cracks beginning to show early. We heard from WGN's Ben Bradley, more information he was gleaning from his sources about the perpetrators, and then even from former cops talking about some of the weird things that they were seeing, the noose still around his neck. What do you believe was the smoking gun for investigators that really cracked this thing wide open?
Well, ultimately, Alex, it turns out there was a video, and on the video, it just wasn't adding up with what Smollett was reporting to police. And then, shortly thereafter, the two individuals who were allegedly the attackers had come forward and actually engaged with law enforcement, and that's when it really began to fall apart. But there were certain aspects, and, you know, we talked about this when the case was, the investigation was opening up and we were learning more. He went to Subway, he got a sandwich, still had the sandwich in his hand after this horrific attack. Those little details don't seem like much, but when you're looking at this from an investigation perspective, they really started to show an inconsistent story on Smollett's part.
Yeah, it makes you scratch your head and wonder whether or not it was truly thought out. All right, so perhaps one of the most criticized in this case, that's former Cook County State Attorney Kim Foxx. That scrutiny eventually leading her to recuse herself from the case altogether. Let's listen to what she told WGN during an exclusive sit-down back in 2022.
I think he'd weighed the evidence that was there. And again, I think he weighed, how do we justify 3 years of this prosecution if we end up giving him the same sentence that he would have gotten in the original one? And so I think he paid a tax for going to trial. And we should not have trial taxes. We should not have enhanced penalties because someone exercises their constitutional right to a trial. He had a right to go to trial. The burden of proof is on the prosecutor, not on the defendant. And I think because this played out as long as it had, he paid a price for it.
So that was about Smollett's eventual sentencing, claiming Jussie Smollett paid a tax for taking his case to trial. Is that a common theme for cases that may take years in the court system?
This was not a common case, Alex. This had so many twists and turns because remember, under Kim Foxx, there was a 16-count indictment that just a couple weeks after the indictment came down through the grand jury, she dropped the charges. There was a non-prosecution agreement. A special prosecutor stepped in and actually resurrected these charges a year later, bringing 6 charges against Smollett. He was ultimately convicted of 5. Now, that conviction was famously overturned at the appellate level. This all relates to whether or not there was an enforceable non-prosecution agreement under Kim Foxx. So this is absolutely not your typical case, Alex. And in fact, we talk about how the high-profile nature of this, celebrity of it all, but it actually expanded the case law in Chicago with respect to those non-prosecution agreements. So it certainly was significant on that front.
Yeah, some long-term impacts as well. Misty Marris, thank you very much for your insight. Looking forward to this story, of course, and so much more to learn.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, this is one you're not going to want to miss, folks. The story snowballed into a clash of race, politics, and culture. You can watch the Jussie Smollett scandal this Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on NewsNation.